Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Arc. Happy Tuesday. Ashley
Happy
Nicole Moss
Tuesday.
here. Bill Ryder. Bill, what's going on?
I find Tuesdays to be the hardest days of the week in general. I like
Really?
Mondays. Yeah, because Monday I know that I'm working, I'm in it. But Tuesday's like, man, I'm a long ways from Friday. I had to work yesterday.
Said no one ever about Mondays and no one ever about
Just
Tuesdays.
me.
That is why you are the gift that keeps on giving, Bill Ryder.
Original
You look
thinker.
very sharp.
Thank you.
Got a
Yeah,
hot
dressed
date
up.
after this? What's going on?
Well, yeah. Well, with my wife, my hot date, we're gonna pick up my kids and run them for 4 hours to various soccer. I heard you had a cool kind of blue thing going, so I got like a little bit.
And
It's
now
a little
listen,
off
great
blue.
minds. I like
Let's
it.
go.
Listen, if you guys aren't already familiar with Bill Ryder, here's our NBA insider. If you want to know, he is going to give you
Got
all
you.
the information you need and you want, and sometimes what you don't want as a fan
Yeah.
of certain teams. And if you're a fan of the Los Angeles Lakers, unfortunately, Bill here has some not so great news for you, Bill. What are we
Bad
hearing?
news. You're right. Trio of bad news. Told that the Lakers expect Gabe Vincent, who I really like when they added him, has barely played in the start of the
From the
season.
Miami Heat?
He last year played well. Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood. Honestly, Wood too. Nice piece. The expectation is all three of those guys will miss the rest of the season. Now, I'm
Wow.
told, a small amount of a chance that Jared Vanderbilt could return, but it's certainly more likely he will not. So you're talking two or three key guys in terms of depth in that team and some of the things that they do. Obviously, it ain't AD, it ain't LeBron, but it's very bad news for the
Yeah.
Lakers. And the injury bug, Ash, it's been everywhere, including your Knicks. It continues for the Lakers.
Listen, it's when it rains, it pours in LA, apparently, because I mean, right now, Lakers are on a 2-game losing streak. They're no longer in ninth place in the play-in. Now they have dropped to 10. And we had this conversation on yesterday's show. We were entertaining the idea of the Houston Rockets, and that team is surging right now on a 5-game winning streak. Those young guys down in H-Town are hungry and want to get into that final play-in spot if possible. Now, I know people said it's not really that possible. They're 5.5 games back, I believe, from that 10th seed. But seeing how things are just not going well for the Lakers, they've just lost a big chunk of depth that they probably could have utilized down the stretch and in a play-in scenario. Does that change your mind now if it's more of a possibility for the Houston Rockets?
It doesn't change my mind on the play-in. It'll be Lakers Warriors. I think there's not enough games left, and they've got enough of a cushion. I think that's the likely outcome.
Okay.
It does change my mind, Ash, on the and you were, I think, on the other side of this, so you're going to be right. I was pretty optimistic, or I thought there was the potential for real optimism that the Lakers, if they got into the best of 7 series, now they'd have to win 2 playing games, and there's a lot of ands and ifs and buts here. And if they missed the Denver Nuggets in the first round, other side of the bracket, I thought they had the ceiling to make a really deep run. If you got AD and you got LeBron, maybe anything's possible. But these are significant losses, and if they are, in fact, as I'm told, out for the season, I think the Lakers are what they look like when you look at the standings, and that's a team that probably doesn't matter in the long run.
Speaking of the standings, correction, the Lakers beat the Hawks last night, and the Warriors lost to my New York Knicks. We'll talk about that a little bit in a little bit. So now the Lakers are actually back in the 9th spot, and Golden State is in the 10th spot. So they're a little bit of a cushion room for the Los Angeles Lakers. But again, Houston, they may not get in, but they're definitely going to make it very uncomfortable for both the Warriors and the Lakers, who keep swapping back and forth between 9th and 10th place. But we're going to go to Cleveland for a second because we have some news coming out of the Cavaliers organization, and it's not great. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, it's one thing after another. And this time it says that Donovan Mitchell sustained a nasal fracture at Houston on March 16th and missed the Cavaliers' next game at Indiana on March 18th. A medical procedure was performed this morning at Cleveland Clinic to realign the affected area. Mitchell will be reevaluated in approximately 1 week, and his status will be updated as appropriate. So they get him back and they lose him again.
And it's weirdly nebulous. And look, this is the. I like Cleveland. I like Cleveland. Yes, last year, just as they were constructed. I liked them 2 years ago before Donovan Mitchell got there. I think they've got a good enough core and enough balance to make a really deep run. But obviously, you have to have Donovan Mitchell. He's your star player, and he really is the guy. They are short on scoring. They're great defensively. He has to be there for them. Now, we'll see what happens, but it's just another one of those injury things that are popping up with all these teams that, at least when we get to the postseason, want to be contenders. And in Cleveland's case, great regular season, have played really well, have battled, brutal news if it's any kind of medium-term reality in terms of time that he'll miss.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously in the Eastern Conference, things are a little bit different than the West, where it seems like between 6 and 10, everything's constantly moving and evolving. Given everything that the Cavs have been through in the past month and a half, I would say 2 months, really, they're still in third place. They're still comfortably in third place. So I mean, granted, under 15, between 15 and 20 games left of the season, it's very unlikely, especially in the Eastern Conference, that they're going to drop out of the playoffs. The Knicks, Knicks obviously are surging, so maybe they may lose their third spot, maybe become a 4th seed. But again, it's just a testament to how drastically different the East Coast is to the West Coast when it comes to basketball. If this was the East, they may be in a play-in by this point. Like, this is insane.
Yeah, I mean, and luckily we're 15 games left. So for give or take, I think some teams have 16. So for teams that have injuries, at least those that are in the right spot, like the Cavs in the standings, at least, and really the Timberwolves. Yeah, I mean, at least there's a cushion there and gives you get the benefit of what you've earned over the first big chunk of the season.
Absolutely. And we're gonna switch gears.
All right.
Get to the
I know what you want to talk about.
Get to the meat of this
the
conversation.
Big story.
And that is my favorite team. Born and raised New York Knicks fan here, in case you guys are new to the pod. And I'm trying to convert Bill to join us in the orange and blue.
I don't think I'd be welcomed. I said something really dumb about Brunson a couple years ago. I think I'm like out of the I didn't know he could do this. I was wrong.
In fairness,
I didn't realize.
A lot of people had opinions about Jalen Brunson. And I guess, hindsight is 2020. We talk about this often. There were Knicks fans who were kind of like, I don't know. And listen, rightfully so. We didn't really see much from him. We only saw that small spurt. Obviously when Luka went down those games, and that's kind of what put the spotlight on him. But before that, it's not a name that people were really talking about unless you were a Dallas Mavericks fan. You weren't very familiar. It's not like he ever made an all-star game before. He's never been on that kind of a platform. But Jalen Brunson just goes to show what is for you is meant for you and will come when it is ready. But listen, they beat the Warriors last night, 119-112, and they did it obviously without OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, and Julius Randle. Jalen Brunson had 34, Miles McBride 29, Josh Hart.
The Miles McBride game.
We like to say deuce. That's how we say it when he does something dope in New York. Hartenstein 13, DiVincenzo, Big Ragu, as we like to call him, 18 points. Josh Hart with a triple-double. I mean, listen, anybody who ever said the Knicks weren't deep might stand corrected.
Can I gently push back on that? Or can I put credit for their depth? Tom Thibodeau is sort of a divisive figure as a coach. I mean, he's obviously a great coach, but there is this reputation, and I think it is well-founded, that he wears people down. The old joke that his rotation, right? How deep does he go? 5 guys. And the Derrick Rose years and just all wear and tear. But he also squeezes every last drop of talent from the guys that he uses. And I think that there's a little more, not a lot, but a little more flexibility in how many guys he uses. And even as offensively this year, before Anunoby came in, really good team offensively, and strangely for a Tibbs team, not great, Ash. Defensively. Now with Anunoby, they're better defensively, and it's been impressive. You're right. All those names that you just rattled off, who are sort of secondary guys or guys we didn't. I mean, your Deuce. How do I say it?
Deuce.
I mean, that's just a random guy who. So give Thibodeau credit, I think, for how impressive it has been in getting real minutes and real quality from players without Randall, without when OG's been out.
Yeah.
Jalen Brunson. I think that's a coaching reality, and that's a Thibodeau reality.
I mean, everybody outside of Jericho Sims had points. Everyone saw minutes. Jericho Sims had the least amount of minutes with only 4, but Burks, Achua, Bogey, those guys also saw minutes. But I think to your point about squeezing every drop out of your players, the alarming fact here is that Miles McBride saw 46 minutes and Josh Hart saw 48 minutes.
That's crazy. I mean,
there's your point, Bill.
Although I was sort of a doubter when he went. You are depleted, and you do want to win these games, and you are on a West Coast road trip that is not easy. And I know the Warriors didn't play particularly well last night, but I think I'm wrong. The Warriors are still dangerous. They have these moments in them. So to go and win that game without any of your stars other than Brunson is really impressive. And I guess in this scenario, you want to play guys 48 minutes, you can play him 48 minutes because you don't have a lot of options.
I mean, there's multiple ways to kind of dissect this, but I'm going to start on the Knicks side and then go back to the Warriors.
All right.
Because some alarming news in the midst of all the good news that transpired with the Knicks going 3-0 on their West Coast road trip so far is OG Anunoby will most likely miss the rest of the New York Knicks West Coast trip because of what the team is calling injury management. Now, Tom Thibodeau, the alarming part about this, though, is that he did not supply a timeline for the injury beyond this week, but he did say that OG underwent a MRI on his elbow and it did come back clean. So, or clear rather. So that's good news. The fact that there is no longer a timetable is a little bit alarming because the Knicks are 15-2 with him in the lineup.
So we talk a lot. I think it's a straw man argument. We talk a lot about about how the regular season doesn't work in the NBA or matter in the NBA. Not true. And I think what you just said is such a great point on Anunoby. And I think to a lesser degree, it's true for the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves don't have a choice with Cat, but both of these teams have built the cushion through regular season excellence. And what I think is interesting about the Knicks, they're not going to be in the play-in, right? Do they want the highest seed in home court as much as they can get it? Of course they do. But you can actually protect OG Anunoby if it's 50-50, right? Because it's just time and it sounds like it's rest and you want that elbow to be okay. You have done well enough in the regular season. And really, in many cases, Jalen Brunson has done well enough in the regular season with Randall being out and when Anunoby's been out and before Anunoby got traded. I mean, this has been a team that's built this cushion. And I like for your team, Ash, and for the Knicks chances that they can kind of say, you know what? If we were in that 7-8, if we were in that 8-9, if we were the Warriors or the Lakers, maybe we'd have to play Anunoby, but we don't have to. And we can try to maximize the likelihood he's good for the playoffs. Because to your point, their ability, I think, to be cautious with him, which is not what a Thibodeau team typically does with a star, is really, really good news for planning for what they want to accomplish this season.
I mean, I obviously want to look ahead down the stretch into the playoffs or play-in if you're the Warriors. On the Knicks side of things, obviously Anunoby is a little bit different because he has been in the lineup a little bit, coming and going and obviously going again in this part of the series. I mean, in this part of the year. But you kind of know what you look like with him at this point. So when you implement him back in, whenever that may be, it's not a shock to the system, right? But on the side of Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle, that's where things get a little bit sticky because you've been without them for so long at this point that it's almost, yes, what they bring as individuals, as teammates to this Knicks offense and defense. But at this point of the year and then looking into the playoffs, is there worry? I know there's worry for me and a bunch of other Knicks fans that bringing them back without enough time for them to get acclimated and the chemistry to get readjusted to their presence is concerning because they're playing well without them.
So it's a really interesting conversation. I have two thoughts. One, I don't think there are many coaches who have the guts to, if they need to, sit a star or change their role. I think Thibodeau's an exception to that. I mean, this is his life. This is his relationship. This is he's married to this job. And so if and it's Randall in particular, right? If he makes the decision that he doesn't need him or maybe like that Julius Randle's role or fit needs to change or the role needs to change because the fit isn't there because they're not in rhythm, he'll do it. But I also think it's probably a huge help for the Knicks. I think that's probably not the issue because I'm not sure that you turn away the offensive firepower, even for a game or two that Randall can bring you when you get to the playoffs.
Right.
Yes, they're markedly improved defensively. I think Anunoby coming in is a big part of the reason, and you want that to continue. But I think you welcome both those guys back, but especially Julius Randle. I'm not as high on Randall as other people. I don't think he's what my colleague in radio called him, the new Chris Bosh. Remember that a year ago?
Gosh.
That was crazy.
Hey, Chris Bosh is a Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer.
World champion 3 times, I believe.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Chris Bosh
on Bosh's name.
Bosh can be the best player on a playoff team. I mean, he can be, and he would have been if he hadn't lost his career in Miami to health issues. Randall can't, but there's an injection of offense there that I think you really, and I think you will progress if the matchups are right, especially as you progress in the playoffs for Knicks fans.
We're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, I want to touch upon the Warriors real quick because we didn't get to that before break. And then we're going to dive into the dunk of the year and a very interesting conversation on the future of the NBA. Bill Ryder is going to look into his crystal ball and tell us what we can expect. We'll be right back.
The blackout mystery remains.
Welcome to March Madness. Whoa!
You just never know in the tournament who is going to shine.
Stream March Madness live on any device, anywhere, and be ready for anything.
Welcome back to Beyond the Arc, everybody. Ashley Nicole Moss, Bill Ryder. And before the break, I said that we were going to dive into the Warriors a little bit. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I mean, the Warriors have been interesting these past few months, to say the least. They have this moment where you think, oh my God, they're the Golden State Warriors again. The window's not closed. We're never going to get rid of these guys. And then they can't beat a short-handed Knicks team at home, and they can't seem to get out of their own way. Now the Lakers are in the 9th spot in the play-in. The Warriors are now back in the 10th. They've been flip-flopping, it seems, these past few weeks. But are the Warriors fool's gold? Are they who we thought they were at this point of their careers, their legacy as an era, if you will? Or is it just a bad game for a still really good team?
So I think it's a bad game for a mediocre team that has a high ceiling because Steph Curry is still there. Maybe I am just reducing this down to its most basic analysis, and I should be more sort of complex in how you evaluate this team. But there are stretches where they have played at a really high rating, net rating in particular, since Draymond Green came back. That I think is really important and indicates an ability to get back to those places that you have to be an NBA champion. But really it comes down to, I just think we look past Steph, Ash. And I'm not saying you, I'm not saying me. I just think in general, over the years, if LeBron is on a team, whatever's been going on, they make the real playoffs, we say, you don't want to play him. If Giannis gets into the series, and they obviously, the Bucks are really good. Doesn't matter what's going on with Doc or him and Dame, and they played better, but they got a chance. Same thing with Joker, even before he won an NBA championship. The same should apply to Steph. In fact, it should apply to Steph more than maybe anybody on earth not named LeBron James. And so for me, like, if that team is healthy, if Draymond can string together great games, particularly if they can be a little better defensively, if and when we've seen moments where Klay Thompson has been great, largely, not last night, largely from the bench. Yeah, I still think it's a mediocre team that's got a high ceiling that had a really bad night against, as we discussed, a Knicks team that has shown a lot of fortitude to win, even when they've been injured. That's still not an easy game, even if you're the Warriors and you should win it.
Listen, it's definitely going to be interesting these down the stretch, if what the Warriors ultimately end up, if it's 9th, if it's 10. Obviously for the league, a matchup between the Warriors and the Lakers, one of them being out after that is over, is not what they want. But again, it's just what we're constantly talking about, the changing of the guard when it comes to the Western Conference specifically, and how the young teams and the young players are now being pushed to the forefront after years of kind of development. And the older teams, we're starting to see them kind of dwindle and lose that dominance over the conference, which brings us to this next conversation. Now, Anthony Edwards had the dunk of the year. Okay. Now, some people are saying it wasn't really a dunk. He just slammed it. Whatever. I'm going to call it the dunk of the year. Okay. Yeah. It's a whole argument on NBA Twitter. If it was a dunk, it was insane. Okay. To the point where John Collins was then out of the game, the remainder of the game, with a concussion. Do you know what it's like to get dunked into a concussion? That's
real talk right there.
I mean,
was I allowed?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't sure I was allowed to sell up. Usually you laugh when a guy gets posterized. I don't even know what I was allowed to do because he dunked on him so bad he concussed the guy.
Well, we found out about the concussion a little bit after the dunk.
That's fair.
It wasn't we knew.
Did you see that clip when he was leaving, when Ant was leaving after the game and kids were asking for his autograph and a kid asked for his jersey and he said, I gotta give it to Collins.
I wouldn't want to, respectfully. You're not gonna dunk on me and then give me your jersey. You know what I mean? There's a line. Hell no. I'm a man, damn it. But I think, as impressive as that dunk was, I think what we really have to look at is just how impressive Anthony Edwards has been without Karl Anthony Towns, who obviously is not with the Minnesota Timberwolves because of a meniscus situation that he's been dealing with. But Anthony Edwards has averaged 32 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists in 6 games without Karl Anthony Towns this season. It's impressive.
It is impressive.
It's needed. It's necessary.
So we talked about this, I think, in other parts of, I don't think we launched the podcast yet, but other parts of CBS Sports, Ash, you and I and John Gonzalez, who we do this with, And the sort of question that we all had was, okay, the Timberwolves look like a contender. We have different views of what that looks like and sort of if it translates. Can Anthony Edwards continue to make this team, which has a great defense, but is a little weak offensively? They have the best defense most nights in the NBA. Can Ant be such a superstar that he can do without Cat? And the answer to your point is yes. Like it's 6 games, but I almost swore there. Wow. I mean, this dude is, I think he is, and I don't think it's recency bias. I think he's a absolute potential face of the league, superstar in the years ahead. I think he's showing that carrying this team without Cat.
Listen, it's Power Rankings Tuesday. So in just a little bit, we're going to go ahead and have Bill look into his crystal ball and tell us his top 5 players of 2029. But before we get into that conversation, post All-Star break, there was multiple conversations being had, or, even leading up to the All-Star break, multiple conversations being had about specific All-Stars, Jaylen Brown being one and Tyrese Halliburton being another. Obviously, Jaylen Brown entered the dunk contest, and a lot of people were like, come on, Jaylen, like, what was that? Tyrese Halliburton named an all-star, and everyone was saying he's the next guy to watch. He's going to be one of the top dogs in the league. And I'm going to give you some numbers, Bill. I'm going to start with these. I'm just going to give you these numbers. All right. 11%, 11%, 16%, 33%, 16%. Those are Tyrese Halliburton's 3-point shooting percentage numbers in the past 5 games.
He's been brutal. And that's another team, and stock is down. It's not stock up, stock down day, but that was a question I had when Siakam came in, like when they started to play together, Pascal Siakam and Halliburton, what would they look like? And Coach Avery Johnson, who's going to be on the pod sometimes, we covered the in-season tournament together. That feels like a million years ago. It's only a few months ago, and obviously the Pacers made that game and lost to the Lakers, and they look so good and so dynamic and so dangerous. And you bring Siakam into the mix. I thought there was a chance that the Pacers were going to be Cleveland level, right? Maybe where the Knicks actually are, not the favorites, but they can make a deep, deep run. And that has faded. And Ash, some of it is he just hasn't been, Halliburton, the superstar that he really was before, up until that point. He got hurt. So, and before he got hurt.
It's interesting because on the other side of that conversation, Jaylen Brown, he gets a lot of slack, about the left side of his body and how he can't utilize it and his ball handling skills. And if he's really worth that $300+ million contract, or if he's just second fiddle to Jason Tatum. And he heard the noise because his last 12 games, I'm just going to run through his points because the stat line is just too long for me to get into. We got last 12 games, 31 points, 37 points, 27 points, 27 points, 41 points, 21 points, 29 points, 25 points, 31 points, 30 points, 21 points, and 36 points. Jaylen Brown, Bill, if you were somebody who was on the side that he's not really a conducive part of the organization that he finds himself in, and it's all Jason Tatum all the time, your mind's changed now.
It needs to be. And there was, you're right, a lot of talk that he wasn't a max player, he wasn't worth the money, that he couldn't fit with Tatum. And I don't understand that perspective because those two guys, and I know there's other pieces, and they've had good guys around him, but that core of Tatum and Brown have made an NBA Finals. Now, they lost a couple years ago to the Warriors, but they still made an NBA Finals, and they have made multiple conference finals as a duo. They did it back in the day when they were really young against LeBron, and that when he was with the Cavs. They did it against Miami last year. Remember, lost the first 3 games and then won the next 3, and didn't win that game 7 in Boston and should have. And my point is, you got the core. You pay that man his money. You Ocean's 12 style in cash. You know, is that reference to Wolverine? And you hope that it works out and you put other pieces around him. The real addition wasn't whether he was a star or not. It's you bring in Porzingis, you bring in Drew Holiday. That kind of front office maneuvering makes this team obviously the best team in the NBA. He's always producer Aaron got it. It's a Don Cheadle reference. Well, my favorite. Pay me my money.
Love Don Cheadle, by the way.
You got a voice.
I know. Listen, I was in a special choir when I was in middle school. Okay. I did I was in not Flashdance. That would not have been appropriate. I was in Footloose,
Got it. Got it. I've never seen Flashdance, so I don't really get the reference.
Really?
No. Is that where she like pours the water on her and
Yeah,
like,
she's
what
like,
a feeling?
and she just yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, yeah.
Is it,
You gotta watch
is it,
Flashdance. It's something
does
that
it
I
hold
don't
up?
recommend.
All right, I'll give it a
Yeah,
list.
I mean, it's not. Listen, it's not an Oscar-winning film,
It's not
but
Citizen Kane.
it's entertaining. It's one of those
Got
movies
it.
that, like, just for cultural references, you have to
Yeah,
watch it. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. But
I was
listen,
in a special. Oh, sorry, I was in a
no,
special
go
choir
ahead.
too. It was called "Stop Singing," so we could do a Beyond the Arc about the musical. But you and John will sing, and I'll just kind of like, drums or something.
Listen, the funny thing is like the
Yeah.
special choir, I'm not really quite sure what the criteria was to get in that because I can't actually sing. So I just think it was like one of those middle school things where everyone who auditions like gets in because it's
You're in.
all about that
You got
participation
it.
trophy era, I guess,
You
because
got
I
it.
should not have been there. But listen, we've been talking kind of about, the young bucks in the league,
Yeah.
if you will. And we've seen it, LeBron's getting older, Giannis is getting older, Jokic, Steph Curry, and
Yep.
we're seeing the teams that used to run the league kind of struggling to keep up depending on what conference you're in. Obviously, the Bucks are still very much in the mix, but that speaks more to maybe the Eastern Conference than it does this Bucks specifically. But in the Western Conference, you could absolutely see what I've been calling the changing of the guard happening in real time, which had us thinking for this Power Rankings Tuesday, we should look into the future. All right, we're going to have you look into the future, Bill.
Okay.
The year is 2029. That's
Okay,
5 years from today.
Okay.
And in the year 2029, where I am just as cute as I am right now, because I'm not going to age that much in 5 years,
Good job.
we
Okay.
want to know who
Yeah.
will be the best players in the league, the top 5 players in the league in the year 2029.
And I will still have dark hair because all the Rider men get silver hair in their 30s, but I missed that gene. So I'm like,
Silver hair looks
right?
amazing on guys. Look at Anderson Cooper.
It's coming for me. It isn't here yet. All right. So top 5 players, 5 years from this moment, heading into the 2029 playoffs. Drum roll, please. I do a drum roll, but my desk moves. You notice if I do, like,
Yeah.
it looks like
I go,
there's an earthquake here in LA. Ooh, that's because you're in the honor choir.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
the kind of honor choir. All right. I'm factoring age in, right? Like Giannis will be 34. There are some guys who are going to be a little older. First one's easy. Number one, it's Wemby. It's Wemby. I think Wemby's the top 5 player in the league the next year, the year after. I'm a little worried about this next one because I need him to stay in shape, right? I need him to kind of, take care of himself. I need Luka at number 2. I'm going to go Luka at number 2. Okay.
Interesting.
Mr. Doncic. Yep.
Is Luka a champion at this point?
I think he is only when he forces his way out or just leaves to play with his buddy Joker because they're good friends and they mess around. They're from the same part of Europe, right? Same part of the world. They're buddies. Only if he teams up with Nikola Jokic. But so maybe not if he's playing with. I don't want to go with Kyrie. I'm not playing with Kyrie. All right. Number 3, I'm gonna go Chet. I'm gonna go Chet Holmgren from the Thunder. Might be
okay.
I mean, rookie this year would have been rookie of the year in any year. If I just think I think that he's that good, and B, I think the Thunder are going to be that good, and they're going to be at such a high level. He's going to be so motivated. They're going to win titles, I think, over this stretch. I'm going the guy that inspired this conversation, the man that took a piece of John Collins' soul on national TV and just put it in his pocket and took it home with him and put it up as a trophy in his living room, Mr. Anthony Edwards. I think
Yeah.
I think and it's not recency bias. You and I have discussed this before. I just think he's that talented. And then it gets really hard. I'm going to go SGA. So 2 of the top 5 players are going to be Thunder. Yeah, I think Shea. I think he's it. I think he's legit. And I think he's good enough to win MVPs between now and when Wemby dominates.
Very interesting list because it's a little bit of, I guess, it's some level of expectation you kind of already knew, but then there's some surprisers in there. For example, no Jason Tatum.
That was tough. Can I give you my reason?
Yeah, let me go through the list of some of the guys you missed and then tell me why.
Okay, hit me.
All right. Well, let's just go one by one, actually. Okay, so no Jason Tatum. Why?
So producer Aaron made this point, and he sort of encapsulated what I was thinking. He feels like he's perpetually the 7th best guy in the NBA. Now, next year, like really good.
7th best?
Really?
Okay.
It was Aaron's deal. And I was like, yeah, that's your set. So I think he is incredible. I think that if he starts winning championships, right, play at this level in the playoffs, we'll see him differently. But I think he's hit a very high ceiling where he's going to be. I think this is the player that he is. And I think I think Shea's already passed him, and I think some of these other guys certainly will.
Okay, an interesting name that's not there. Obviously, we haven't heard much of him from off the court situations and then injury. John Morant.
Yeah, that's a really good call. And I thought about it, and it was him or Shea, maybe, and a few other guys. I think that some of it's probably unfair, Ash. He's got to be healthy, and hopefully what the mistakes he's made off court are behind him, but he's got to play, right, in order to be outstanding. And he's probably going to be fine. He's a young guy, but he's so athletic. He reminds me of Russell Westbrook in the sense that he can shoot a little. He can shoot, but he is an athlete. And in 5 years, a little wear and tear, some history of injury, maybe that pulls him down a little bit.
For me, he reminds me a lot of, which is one of the things I love about Jaws, his athleticism and his direct, I feel like, correlation to a Derrick Rose or an Allen Iverson. But with his direct correlation to them, he also reminds me a lot of that tenacity that they played with. And because of that tenacity, how prone they were to injuries. And I think that he's missing that one part of his game, that mid-range part of his game, where if he can just shoot consistently without flailing around and doing all these acrobatic, just incredible things to watch as a fan, it definitely prolongs his longevity. We got to put Jokic in there. I mean, he's still relatively young. Jokic and Giannis. Why aren't they on in your list?
So they're both, if I got my math right, going to be 34.
Which is not old.
Yeah. No, not old, especially today. I mean, hell, LeBron will be 45 when this happens, or 44, and he'll probably still be the 20th best player in the NBA. Just old, father time over there. So Giannis, obviously, as he gets a little older and loses his athleticism, his game is not going to translate the same way. That's not true for Jokic. Again, Aaron's point, he can't run or jump right now, and he looks like he's 50, and he's still the best player on the face of the earth. I think for me, and I actually had him on the list, Ash, and I crossed him out. I had him high. I don't know how much he actually loves basketball.
You think he's going to go play with his horses?
Yeah, might be with his horses, or might just get 4 titles between now and then and say, I like hamburgers. I don't like working out. And
but I will say this though, Jokic is like the amount or lack thereof of energy he exerts, because he doesn't do all this like sexy, just like athletic, just acrobatic movements, will probably prolong his career. He doesn't really move much.
Fair. It doesn't need to. Yeah, it's true.
He's just a freak of nature. He's just that good that he doesn't really have to do much. So like he may play till he's 50 if he really wants to.
If there's anybody on there that I got wrong on this list, I would bet it's him. He's just, to your point, I'm worried he's going to be chilling with his horses.
I want to throw this name in here also. I mean, Jalen Brunson, very young guy.
I love Brunson. He'll be 32.
Yeah.
Little old for that position, although not as much as it used to be.
Okay.
I mean, the science has changed. I thought about it because I have so egregiously doubted him in the past, and now I want to overcompensate. He's the best. I love Brunson. And I think he's probably higher rated for me than most people. I think the way he's carried this Knicks team and the leadership that he's shown, to me, he's a top 10 player in the NBA, which I don't think a lot of people agree with. He is for me. I don't know that in 5 years he's over some of these names.
And one more name I want to throw at you before we go to break is a guy who's not drafted yet, but he will be in 2025, and that's Cooper Flagg.
Yeah, possible. And honestly, maybe there's some 15-year-old kid in wherever, Lithuania, that I don't know about, right? Who's just out there balling. He's going to grow 4 inches. It happens.
The next Porzingis or something like that.
Yeah, that young dude is really. So I thought about putting on the list, like maybe the honest answer is I don't know enough about how he projects. I haven't talked to. I will for the pod the next month or so, and I'll be at the combine in Chicago. I don't know how he projects well enough to believe that he's going to be better than SGA in 5 years. But you're right. Him or whoever the guys are coming to the league the year after that could certainly in their second, third, fourth year be outstanding.
Well, listen, we will spin the block in 2029 and see how many of these you actually got right, because footage lives forever, as you know. So this is not going anywhere. Somebody's going to pull this up on a late night show when Cooper Flagg is the best player in the league with Wemby. And say, you remember when Bill Ryder was wrong about Jalen Brunson? He was also wrong about you. Take a look. And they're going to play this clip, Bill. So
I was on Fallon or The Tonight Show or one of those, something I said about Brunson, and they showed it to Brunson.
Yeah.
And he was
You're gonna
he's
be
such a
you're gonna
he's
be on
such a
the late
great
night
guy
show
too.
again in 5 years from
Again,
now.
part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
Brunson will present it to yeah.
And
Probably
Brunson's
right.
gonna be on the couch and be just like,
I remember.
"Don't feel bad. You did it to me too."
Been there.
Well, listen, when we come back, your guy Isaiah Thomas is rallying for a certain player that I'm a big fan of to enter the Hall of Fame. And also, I mean, we're talking about being on a late night couch, but some people don't even have mattresses. And sometimes those people exist in the NBA. I don't know. I'm confused. We'll talk about it in a second. We'll be right back.
It's time for the madness.
And CBS Sports HQ has your wall-to-wall NCAA tournament coverage. We got your game highlights, expert analysis, and insights all the way to the Final Four. Start and end your March Madness coverage with CBS Sports HQ.
Welcome back to Beyond the Arc, everybody. Ashley here, Bill here, and Stephon Marbury. Starberry, I had a pair when I was a kid, being in New York, growing up in New York. Stephon Marbury, an absolute legend, in just a multitude of ways. But your guy Isaiah Thomas recently said that outside of him being a legend, he's a Hall of Famer. He said, quote, Stephon Marbury should be in the Hall of Fame. I've been calling it for a long time, and I'm calling it again tonight. Bill, the Hall of Fame is a conversation that is constantly had. Who should be in it? Who should not be in it? Much like the NBA 75 list, there were some names on there that raised a few eyebrows, and I remember people were talking about that for a month straight, it felt like. The NBA and the NBA Hall of Fame and who should be in it and who shouldn't is much like that conversation. It actually has been happening a lot longer. Stephon Marbury is an interesting name, though. How do you feel about it?
So I, in all the sports, tend toward more exclusivity is better than sort of being generous, even though I know it's really important to these guys. I can remember I was around Gary Payton. I was working with GP on TV back when he got in. And GP is an amazing guy, but I wouldn't say he's an overly emotional guy. And he got emotional when he found out, right? So I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. So I don't think Marbury's a Hall of Famer. I love that Isaiah is like fighting for his guy.
Two-time All-Star.
Respect the hell out of loyalty. I know. Two-time is – so you have an emotional connection to it, right? And it's close, though. And he has Hall of Fame talent, right? He's obviously a Hall of Fame talent. I just don't know if the career quite lived up for me to that.
So when you equate a Hall of Famer, because we have people who are in the Hall of Fame who've never won a championship. Allen Iverson, one of my idols, right here behind me, never won an NBA championship, is a Hall of Famer. Stephon Marbury, two-time All-Star, never won a championship. So it is interesting because when we dissect this conversation about the Hall of Fame, it's very easy to say, well, if you never win a ring, you should never be in. But that means that guys like Charles Barkley,
that's not the standard.
There's a list of guys who will never be in there. So do you then start taking into the equation basically stuff and impacts outside of the sport, how they expanded the sport, or how their impact was in the city in which they play in? Like, do you take those things into consideration?
For the same reason, like we're talking about the positive side of that, and I love that, for the same reason that I wouldn't keep somebody who's a piece of garbage in terms of as a human being out of the Hall of Fame if you found out. Like, to me, it's a different. I don't need to like the person to vote for the person or to support, I guess, their candidacy for the Hall of Fame.
I mean, Karl Malone's in the Hall of Fame, so.
I mean, and Karl Malone should be. And by the way, never won a title. So,
but I mean, if we took into consideration outside things, he wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. So,
right. So
there's that.
That's not it. That's not it. And I also don't want to put people if I could talk NFL for a sec, I love Donovan McNabb. We have worked together. He's a friend of mine. And I've said to his face, he's not a Hall of Famer. Just because I like the guy he didn't go great. But how did
he take that?
It was the first it was our first conversation. So we had to work from a place of we had to find some trust. So to me, like MVP, like take Derrick Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Derrick Rose is going to be, if he doesn't get it, the first player in the history of the NBA to win an MVP and not make the Hall of Fame. And there's a push for that guy. I just don't think Derrick Rose is it.
No, I push back on Derrick Rose.
You think he's a Hall of Famer?
I push back.
Like Marbury, it's close, but it's emotional, right? Because I actually covered Derrick a little, and sweet, nice guy, great guy. I don't know if I think both those guys should have been Hall of Famers and should have had Hall of Fame careers, but I don't think that they did.
It's an interesting conversation because there's so many different layers and there's so many different tiers on what is appropriate to kind of gauge and what is not. You know, if you've never won a championship, then what's the next thing you kind of go ahead and use to gauge a player's success and worthiness of being in the Hall of Fame? For example, do you put Carmelo in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, you're gonna get mad at me. So I have pushed back on this, but I think the answer is yes. Like I remember when he was
I agree.
He's also a great guy. I mean,
but I don't know. We don't take that into consideration, do we?
Yeah, I know. Do I think he is more of a Hall of Famer than the other two names that we've thrown out there.
You think I think him and Derrick Rose are equally Hall of Fame material.
I think like the longevity of his career and his prodigious scoring, and as Aaron points out, it is the Basketball Hall of Fame, not just the NBA Hall of Fame. So for Melo, that is significant. And it's interesting. Does Derrick Rose have a different resume if Memphis doesn't blow that 7-point lead or whatever it was with very little time left against Kansas? I covered that game, so I kind of remember it. Memphis missed some free throws, which again, I'm putting Melo in. So here's me. I'm putting Melo in. I'm barely passing on Rose, and I'm sort of barely passing on Marbury.
Yes, to Aaron's point, Carmelo Anthony, although he's never won a ring, probably the greatest U.S. Olympian player. From the male side. From the male side. Yeah, from the male side, at least for Team USA, for sure.
Am I a bad American when I'm just like,
does that not move the needle for you?
It doesn't inspire me the way that it should.
Really?
And I've covered the Olympics, but I think that's a me problem, honestly.
Listen, this is running through Derrick Rose. I mean, obviously MVP in 2011, 3-time NBA All-Star 3 years in a row. NBA All NBA first team, NBA Rookie of the Year, All Rookie.
He was
first
amazing until he got
team.
hurt.
I mean, incredible, just accolades. Taking away obviously the fact he's never won a championship, and because of the injuries that he sustained in his career, brutally sustained in his career, it changed the course of it. I don't know if I'm putting Carmelo in. I'm making a case for Derrick Rose.
You are.
I may not be able to make a really strong case for
Steph
Marbury, but I can make a case for Derrick Rose, and I would if they ever asked me to. So
I think D Rose might be the most talented player to in the history of the sport not to have the career they should have because of injuries. Because we saw it.
Him and Penny Hardaway.
Early. Yeah, Penny Hardaway, Grant Hill. I mean, Grant Hill could have been top 3 or 4 or 5. You know, that was sort of the. But maybe because I covered Rose a little bit, I was around those Heat teams and I covered Rose a little. I mean, that Chicago team was going to get past Miami eventually, I think.
For sure.
And then obviously got hurt.
Aaron mentions Brandon Roy.
Oh, that's a good one too. That's a good, yeah. Oh man.
What about Ben Simmons? Ben Simmons is a good one.
He didn't love the game though. Like Ben Simmons didn't. Ben Simmons should have been Giannis.
Was supposed to be the second coming of Magic Johnson.
But that guy wouldn't even like work on his shot. Don't even get me started on Ben Simmons. No, I won't put him in the same breath as those other guys.
We need to give you a whole show, a whole hour for Bill to just rant off things about Ben Simmons because he has a lot.
Is that called therapy? It's called therapy.
We're gonna end the show with a weird story. I mean, maybe it's not weird to you. It's weird to me. So DeAndre Ayton has been in the news for just weird things lately. I mean, if you remember the Portland situation where, you know, it was ice on the road and he couldn't get out of his house apparently. But it was weird because other players were able to get out of their houses.
Everybody else made it.
Everyone else made it to the game. Maybe he lives like really high up in the mountains or something. I don't know the situation.
I don't think he does.
You would know it better than I would. But he's given a quote recently that has everybody on social media very confused. So he says that sleeping on an air mattress earlier in the season could have contributed to his early season struggles. Okay, here's the quote. He says, "My body just wasn't my body. People forget the humane difference of me adjusting to everything. That included something as routine as getting proper sleep, just being comfortable in waking up. I didn't have a bed for quite some time. I was on an air mattress just trying to figure it out."
I think it's a big deal.
I want to put this out there for everyone who's unaware. DeAndre Ayton signed a 4-year, $132 million contract with the Phoenix Suns, and obviously is still getting paid from that contract. So,
Brutal.
Listen, I'm not saying it had to be. I didn't have to. I don't think it has to be an extremely expensive bed, but I feel like for $132 million, you should have a bed or 2 or 3.
By the way, can I just side pocket a conversation we should do when it's a slow news day? Is Joe Cronin the worst GM in the NBA? Nice guy, by the way. I mean, come on. Between the draft selection, the decisions, what he got for give me a break. So here's the thing. So when he left Phoenix, I was a little surprised because I liked him on that team, and I think he's talented. And just talking to folks in that organization, this isn't secret or new now, but they wanted him gone. Like nobody the players weren't on it. The coaching staff was not interested in having that player be part of their organization. The front office wanted him gone. You had new owner. I mean, it's just it's been a mess. There's something wrong here. And like the executive functioning is actually you don't know you don't sleep in a bed, and you don't make that kind of money. I own a bed. What are we talking about here? Like you have to act as an adult and take care of yourself, especially if you're an athlete. And that combined with the fact that he couldn't get through the ice game. And by the way, Ash, he does not live in the mountains. So like that's that, right? Couldn't get there. And the way that he left Phoenix and the way in which they basically were.
Well, him and Monty didn't even speak to each other. Right. It was very odd.
And Monty's beloved by most people.
The bed thing very much threw me off. I just feel like
very strange.
The house probably was already furnished. If not, you could have got some furniture before you got there, been in a rental house that had furniture, or got in a hotel while you were getting your house. I don't know, DeAndre. Listen, if you want to go ahead and kind of put blame on your early struggles in the season, I don't think an air mattress is the route you want to go, just because it doesn't really make sense in a bunch of ways. You got to come up with a better excuse. That's all I'm saying. Be
an adult, get a bed, executive functioning. It would not instill confidence if I were the Trailblazers and I had that in that contract that I'd offered him.
Well, listen, Bill and I both have beds, and later on tonight, we're going to go to our beds and sleep and know that we gave you guys a great podcast this past Tuesday. But that does it for us here at Beyond the Arc. Make sure you guys are tapping into all of our socials and following us wherever you get your podcast and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Bill and John will be back at it tomorrow with whatever craziness the NBA decides to give us. Until then, we will see you later. Bye.